We are live. So, good morning, everyone. It is Coffee and Politics 101 with Sydney Walker. And it's a nice Saturday, a little chilly, but still nice. We're having some great spring weather. And today we're having a discussion. Is one of the favorite topics that I have, because it is about doing business with entities, government entities that have secured dollars, where there are secured opportunities out there for you as an entrepreneur, as a small business. And how can we get in there to figure out where our place is to sell our product? And a product isn't necessarily you're selling napkins and toilet paper and paper towels to the school district, but it could be a service. And so today we're going to talk quite a bit about the technology side of things, because as a IT professional, that is always an opportunity that I don't think that people actually see. And I know tons of people that do coding, that do security, and there's so many opportunities out there as we're advancing in this technology age. So today I am joined with Cecil Lofton, dear friend of mine. He's been on the Ed Gray Show with me, and he is the former chair of the Regional Black Contractors Association in Dallas, and also the former chair of the Greater Southwest Black Chamber of Commerce. So good morning, Cecil, and welcome to Coffee and Politics.
Good morning, Sydney. How are you?
Great. How about yourself?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful on this Saturday morning. It's great.
Yes. It looks like it's going to be a beautiful day out, but it sounds like a beautiful time to get in on bonds that have recently passed with the ISD. And there was also a bond election in 2015 where now all of those projects are completed as well. So let's just talk about, what these bond packages are with school districts.
Well, I think as you mentioned in 2015, all the way up to culmination to 2020, the most recent bond is $3.7 billion. That's with a B, not with an M, but with a B.
With a B, yes.
What that encompasses is that there's going to be 14 new schools built. Within that 14 schools, there will be high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools in certain areas. Also, that's part of the Proposition A. Now, Proposition B is part of the technology package, which consists of $270 million in technology. So, which means that every school in the district will be touched with new technology.
Wow.
And what that does, that gives a lot of people an opportunity really to evaluate how they can possibly be part of the process.
Okay.
Now, when you start looking at bonds in terms of how that money is used and how the voters have voted and said, yes, we want to do this, then you have to carve out where all these dollars go. Because oftentimes at the end of the day, going all the way back to 2011, with some of the other bonds, there was a company called Mason Tillman that did disparity studies after each bond. And what always normally happens is that when there's a percentage goal that should be met by minority firms, oftentimes when those numbers come across as African Americans, if we total 1%, that's unheard of, because to me, it's a total disgrace when we come in 1%, 2%, or 3% as it relates to African American firms when you're spending billions of dollars. So those disparity studies are readily available online. Anyone can actually pull them up and read them and look at those numbers in terms of how they spent that money. But you have to keep in mind that all these schools and all these services that are procured are in our communities. But we don't guide the ship in terms of where those dollars goes, because most of those dollars are our tax dollars. And most of those.
So it sounds like, before really jumping into this and even looking at the current allocations for the money, you need to understand where the money has been spent previously. That's
Yeah,
kind of what I'm hearing, because it sounds like when you're looking for these opportunities, you do a lot of digging into the history
correct.
of, previous projects, who was on them, who was the prime, who the subs were, and what requirements
Correct.
were being asked of everyone, before you even think about, let me see what I can do.
Correct. And I think one of the other things that as a community we always have to look at, and there was a program that was structured years ago, and I had the pleasure of being on that committee, and I chaired that committee for 2 years. And it was the MWB Advisory Committee that the district felt that something of that magnitude was needed. It was based on community leaders, people
Okay.
of different organizations, and I was part of that. So we helped design the participation goals and the outline and the structure of how that would work with minority firms. And
Okay.
and what we would normally do after specific projects, we will look at that goal and see if that goal was met by the general contractor. Because oftentimes there's certain language in those contracts, obtainable goals, or that type of language means that you don't really have to work hard to try to get those individuals involved in there. All you have to do is make 3 phone calls. If they don't respond and they say no, they don't want to be a part of that, well, that gives you a pass. No,
Okay.
it doesn't give you a pass. What it
Okay.
means is that you haven't done the work, you haven't done your due diligence to make sure that you get more minority firms involved. So we have to change that idea in terms of how general contractors think when it comes to doing those type of projects in our community.
Well, what would be any hesitation that, minorities wouldn't want to participate? And I'm gonna take a stab. Easiest one I would think is too much red tape.
Well, yeah, oftentimes that I always like to say if you're in business to do business, then you have to be strong in that business. You have to really understand your market, and you
Right.
have to really you have to have that dogged attitude that no is not acceptable, and you
Okay.
have to do the work. You have to do the background work. You have to study. It's just like boxers. When they get into the ring, you often see them watching tape. And what they
Yes.
do, they try to study their opponent. They want to know where their jab is coming from, their hook is coming from, so that way they can avoid that. We have
Okay.
to do the same thing. We have to understand what the disparity study means. We have to understand how the process and procedures are and how these contracts are awarded. Because oftentimes general contractors, in most cases, they get these projects awarded, and if you submit a quote to them or a bid or something of that magnitude, they forget about you because they use you to get into the process. Then after the process is over, then they push you to the side or try to get you to come back and redo your numbers. So that's what we call a bait and switch. That's been going around for years. So you have
Okay.
to,
Yeah. Because I was gonna say, when Fair Park, with the city of Dallas, when all of that was going on, and you and I had tons of discussions during that time, and all of the primes that were submitting their proposals to the city of Dallas, they had to walk in with who their MWBEs were going to be. And it's disheartening to hear this bait and switch thing going on. Like, yeah, I need you to help me get this contract. And now that I got it, check the deuces. Or, I know you initially said that you needed, $250,000 to do this. Well, now I need you to rework those numbers.
well, that is the bait and switch, so, for me, if someone were to come to me and I got involved in the beginning of the process and I gave you specific numbers in terms of what that whole overall scope was. And let me
Yes.
just break it down to your audience, what I mean by overall scope and small
Yes.
things. Say
Yes.
for instance, if you came to me and said, well, Cecil, I want you to do a roof, then you would say, well, this is the cost of the roof. In the midst of the roof, I'm not going to say, well, you told me it was going to be 20,000. Can you do it for 10? That's what we call a bait and switch. So
Okay.
when you go into that process and someone to come to you and say that specifically to you, then that's when you would pull out the detailed information that you submitted and say, well, no, this is what it is, and I can't change that because this is my cost. This is my overall percentage, all the things, my labor costs and everything that's involved. Now, if that specific person don't accept that and still try to negotiate that, I think that's when you really need to really understand the process and how it works. I mean, you can go back to the district and say, hey, this is what we did. This is what happened. I submitted to this person. They're now trying to get me to negotiate on the back end. Well, the district will say, well, no, they're not supposed to do that. We accepted that number. So you have to know how the game is played. You have to know the people that you need to align yourself with. And you have to make sure you stay steadfast and focused on that and make sure that you don't change. Because that's what they try to do. They try to cut the margins every single time, and you don't want to allow them to do that.
So there is recourse if someone tries to make you come down, and that's huge to say that's a 50% reduction that you pointed out. And anybody who knows director level, senior manager level, with each year of looking at the budget for the following year, and companies are always trying to get you to get the same level of service with the same number of staff or higher level of service with usually a 25 to 30% reduction in your budget. And everybody is always sweating bullets and scrambling and trying to figure out who they can cut off. So they can, and still meet those goals and come under budget. So I'm, sub A and you're the prime, and I can go to the district and say, hey, this is not right. And I'm being forced to provide what I provided that was submitted to you as part of the proposal and the bid. And they're wanting me to do it for a lot less money, because we're not talking about 5%. And I can see, maybe shaving off, especially if the full amount wasn't given from the entity. But gosh, that is good to know that if that scenario should happen, there's something that I could do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think you have to weigh in all your options, because there is such thing as a reduction in scope. Maybe something has changed on the district side where they no longer need this, or they no longer need that specific product or services, but that would come in writing from that individual as an addendum or reduction in scope. I mean, that happens all the time. That's not unusual.
Coming from you, the prime, that is coming from the entity that we have been contracted to do the business with.
Correct. Yeah, if the general contractor scope is being reduced, then obviously your scope is going to be reduced too as well. Only if it impacts your scope of work. Not because the contract was reduced, only for your scope. So it's a huge difference there.
Okay, so that is good to know that, it is a formal process for all of this. Are these kind of contingencies in writing as part of the RFP process and the RFB process?
Correct.
They are.
Yeah, all these processes are what they are. They're processes. And I think your audience really have to understand, in order to be successful in this process, you have to really know how the process goes. And what I mean by that is that you have to study how the district does work. Now, you can walk into their diversity department, you can get all detailed information that you want about the bond, meet with the bond program managers, all those individuals who will manage all these jobs, and working with some of these GCs. My advice always been that if you're going to do business with someone, you really need to study who that person is that you're doing business with. there's oftentimes opportunities for people if they look on the district website, they'll talk about pre-bid meetings, they'll talk about a certain bond meetings or town hall meetings. I mean, if you're a business owner, attend those, pass out cards, develop some relationship, find out who buyers are, find out who are letting those contracts. So that way you'll be in the know of what's coming up, because oftentimes misinformation is what we're lacking. You know, we don't even get to the table until it's already over with. Then now we just discover we missed out on opportunity. But if we're there from the beginning, you know, you'll understand where those opportunities come from, so you can monitor that yourself. You can't rely upon anyone calling you and say, hey, I got an opportunity here. No, you can't do that. You have to have a dogged attitude in terms of monitoring everything that goes on. When you talk about $3.7 billion, there's a lot of information that's being funneled everywhere. Now, if you want to be involved in that, you have to make sure you have a structured outline in terms of how you're going to disseminate that information. Now, you're probably saying, well, Cecil, why are you saying all this information, this and that? I'm only a 2-man shop or 3-man shop or something of that magnitude. Now, I understand that because I've been down that road before. But if you are, you know, it doesn't cost you nothing to encapsulate information. Now, what I mean by that, if you're working a 40-hour week, spend 1 hour just to go down to the district to find out information. That's 1 hour out of your time. You got 40 hours. That leaves you 39. Use that 1 hour. If you have to use that 1 hour a week for a whole month, that's 4 hours you already committed for that whole month. And within that 4 hours, I guarantee you will encapsulate all the information that you need.
Okay, so and anyone who has followed the show knows that when it comes to bond elections, I can't have that dogged attitude, because for me as a taxpayer, property taxpayer, you know, you want to know exactly why someone is asking you for more money. They're asking you to pay more for your home value when you get your tax statement. But also, where is this money going to be allocated? So as much as I try to tell everybody, you know, pay attention to this tax statement, pay attention to these discussions, because it sounds like if this is something that I want to do as far as being in business, you know, with the school district, it is all of those things that are leading up to November, when the school board meetings have been had and they voted that they're going to have a bond election. And so they're going to let the people decide. But all of the discussions and meetings and town halls that are leading up to trying to even get it on the election for people to vote on it. And if, you know, some of you guys don't remember, we had the tax ratification election, the TRE, and there were numerous of meetings around the city to talk about, you know, this 13 cents per $100 value in your property for teacher pay raises, you know, early education, pre-K, all of those things. So then you could understand that. Now, if you are a vendor or wanting to become a vendor, it seems like you still need to have that same concern, just on the end of trying to find out what opportunities are going to be there for you, but also starting to meet those stakeholders and gatekeepers.
Well, I think you brought up a valid point, specifically when you talked about homeowners and business owners. And whether homeowners know this or not, if you look at your escrow account, this is strictly for homeowners, and you look at where you're being taxed at, specifically at Dallas County Appraisal District, you're going to have a line item there that's going to say DISD. Or Dallas Independent School District, or something of that magnitude. So every year you're contributing your tax dollars to the district. So what that means to me is that if I'm contributing to this bond, then I want this bond to contribute to me to help me grow, because you're helping them grow too as well. So you always got to make sure that anything that's structured as it relates to your business or anything that you're trying to do is that you want to hold people accountable. I
Right.
mean, you have certain districts that you're conducting business in, whether you're a homeowner, whether you have a brick and mortar, know who your board members are, know what district that they serve, hold them accountable. Go to those board meetings. They're public. Go to
Yes,
those
they are.
board meetings. Find out what you're doing in that district. Find out what your district person is doing in your district where you conduct business. Schedule a meeting with them. Hold them accountable.
Right.
Make sure that that person understands who you are, what type of business that you do, that you need that opportunity. You know, you can't do that during the bidding process because that's a violation.
Okay.
But once you understand a specific project is coming out somewhere down the line, you can always talk to your council person about that. You have to hold them accountable. They're sitting behind those desks, they're having meetings, they're governing everything regarding the school, and they're telling everyone, this is how we're going to spend your $3.7 billion.
Right.
Fine, but how is that going to impact me as a business owner? You know,
Right.
you're taxing me, but yet
Right.
you're not allowing me to work on none of your projects.
Yes.
So you
So
have to make sure
it's
that you carve that out.
yeah, it's a very interesting point that you bring up with understanding what the bond package is going to do for me. Because the biggest selling point is making sure that we are turning out students that are workforce ready for these industries that are hiring like crazy. The demand is there, but also for the up and coming. And I got sticker shock when I saw $1 billion once again for DISD, because I'm just like, okay, we just did $1 billion previously. Where did that money go to? And grant you, and I told you when we were talking before we went live here, that the most noticeable projects and information that I would receive via email had to do with construction. And it seems like there's a lot of information that is easily available. I'm going to say easily available because it's just dumping right into my email box. I didn't have to do a whole lot of work for it. And I get emails from your former association that you chair, the Regional Black Contractors Association, about construction. And so I know that you're in the technology area. And so what are those areas that we need to, be it I want to become a vendor, I want to do business with the school district, as a consumer of the product with kids in DISD, but also as a taxpayer, what should I expect with those dollars going into technology?
Well, I think one of the things that the district has designed is to bring all these schools up to today's standards. I mean, if you look at how things are done in the Asian nations or the Indian nations in terms of their school is year round. It doesn't change. The technology that they have, they're so far advanced than we are. I think we need to get up to scale in terms of how advanced that we need to be. Prime example, some of the older schools now, I mean, they don't even furnish the laptops in some areas. So they're changing all of that where most students will understand how these processes are. So when these technology packages do come out, it's going to be a little bit more advanced. It's going to bring it up to date standards, and it's going to give a lot of people an opportunity to understand what that means for these students, because these students will have an opportunity to really to dive in more into technology than they ever been before.
Okay.
And it's going to be structured that way. So there's a lot of MWB firms who specialize in technology here in Dallas alone. And I think they should all be coming together to see how big a piece of the pie that they can encapsulate, and I always say that if you're going to beat this giant, even if you have to combine your strengths and understand your weaknesses and understand what it is that you need to do as a group, or as a conglomerate, if you will, then you need to combine that. And that way that gives you more strength in a lot of areas to be able to cover some of these technology packages, because they're going to be huge. And the way they're structured in so many different ways in terms of how that technology is being used. And larger firms, who are the ones who are quote unquote pulling the purse strings, if you will, because they are the dealers of the world. I mean, you can structure deals with them too as well, because they have a specific goal that they need to meet too as well.
Okay. Okay, so there's a lot going on with the school districts with bringing everybody up to that 21st century placement and making sure that our kids have that access. So, yes, that laptop they need to get, but as you and I know, there's so much more than just giving them the laptop. It's, the Wi-Fi, VPN, all of the security protocols that are in place or need to be in place, blocking sites that they don't need to visit, and just making sure that, that accessibility is there in a stable environment for them, especially last week talking with Senator Royce West, that now because of the pandemic, we may be seeing school districts do hybrid, where those that do well in the virtual online school can exercise that right there, and those that feel a more traditional route with having their kid there in the physical building, they will have those options there. So it sounds like there's going to be even greater demand for the AV equipment and making sure that those capabilities, streaming and all of that, is more than just, clicking the button for the Zoom link and going in and using that. It's so much more that's encompassed with that. So as far as opportunities are there, can you talk about anything that are specific in technology that people may not be aware of, that they can use their skill set to look at exploring doing business with the school district?
Well, I think there's several parts of it as it relates to technology. And one thing that I want to touch on is school safety. The district, at every school, there's going to be metal detectors. There's going to be scanners there to scan backpacks for weapons and so forth and so on. There's going to be an upgrade of access controlling outdoors, where you can just press one button in the office and you shut the whole school down. There's going to be multiple cameras around the facilities where you can actually see any person that comes in. Now, in the front of schools now, you no longer can just walk into those schools. They have captured security in the vestibule areas. There's 3 points of entry before you can even have access into the hallways. So if there's an active shooter in there, as far as he would get is the lobby. That as far as he will go. He couldn't even get in administrative offices that are over to the left or to the right. There's a vestibule that he'll walk in there if he's piggybacking behind somebody else, and that as far as he can go. So securing all the schools is a priority, and that's part of the whole technology bond. And if anyone who offered those type of services will definitely need to be at the table of negotiation to make sure they can get a piece of that pie, because that's going to be the most important part. And as it relates to technology in the classrooms, and, we discussed that a moment ago, but that's going to be upgraded tremendously, which is needed. So,
gosh, you brought up something that literally, because of the pandemic, I'm going to say I definitely forgot, was yes, prior to COVID-19, everyone was looking at how to prevent active shooters from getting access to the schools and putting students and teachers and administration lives in danger. We've just been focusing on, vaccines and not getting the virus, and we have totally forgotten about catching a bullet.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's understanding how the district is functioning and understand how the students are a priority which is always a good thing when it comes to technology. This is the largest technology package that the district has ever put out, because they understand, because of all the things that's happening in this country, they want to be the first to set precedents in terms of all our schools are secure,
Okay.
and which is a good thing.
Right.
So having that balance and able to accommodate these parents and making sure that if there is an active shooter anywhere, the possibility of that person penetrating that school would be maybe
Minimal.
percent at the most.
Right.
And that has to be something drastic as relates to that 1%, the way these schools are going to be covered. And when you start looking at perimeter control around the schools, there are going to be multiple cameras everywhere, So if you walk on that school property, 9 to 10, there's going to be footage of that. And so that allows the district and the district police to be more effective in terms of identifying suspects or students who go awry or gang violence or anything of that magnitude. So they're able to identify that and shut that down. So it makes the schools a lot safer. So I think parents will be able to really understand now that with this technology, it'll put you at ease in terms of some of the things that the district is putting into place, because
Right.
that always have been something that most parents have been concerned about.
Yes, for sure. And Grant, you and I always try to add a little bit of levity. I'm not making light of it. That was something that never really worried me with Lincoln High School or Madison High School, because those are hood schools, and
Yeah.
we haven't really seen those types of scenarios there. Gang issues for sure. Even when I was in DISD and I was at the Nerd Capital School of Skyline, and we had a stabbing there while I was a high school student. So, during that time period, it was starting to shift and we were starting to see more violence in the schools. But grant you, nothing like a Columbine, nothing that we have seen here in the state of Texas, down by the coast, where someone is literally taking over the school and taking students' lives or threatening teachers' lives. And I know the last legislative session, there was a lot of discussion around having teachers armed with having them carry get a CDL license and actually keeping a weapon on them, and a lot of discussion that went around that. But it's good to know that there are still parts of the 2015 bond that people can still capitalize on and look at the opportunities that are still there. Because I think there sometimes is a misnomer that when the bond election happens, that literally the next day the money is there, and that's not necessarily true. So, I do want to talk about, any changes that have occurred, and you may have touched up on this, any changes that have occurred with the RFP and RFB process for proposals and bids. And I know you talked about, bait and switches and things that, can happen, especially if you're a sub and if changes happen with the scope of work. But as far as just getting into that process, has anything really changed drastically overall for school districts when they're looking to do business with vendors and contractors?
I think it has. I think the district has been very strict. I think they've adopted some additional rules as it relates to some of the same rules that DFW Airport operates by.
Okay.
And that is that the accountability of that percentage has to be met. There's no ifs and buts about it. And I think prior to the pandemic, there was always somebody from that NWB department or bid inclusion department who would attend a lot of these pre-bids, and they were able to speak on that, so the general contractors will understand that loud and clear. There are some subs in the rooms, and these are some of the people that you really need to work with, because these are going to be monitored. And what happens is that the district has certain portal that they have. So when it's time for the general contractors to get paid, there's a percentage goal down there that they have to put down there showing these are the people that we're using on this specific project. So there's documentation prior to going in that they must present.
Okay.
And even when it's time for them to get paid, there's more documentation based on how much you paid those specific subs, because the district monitor that percentage to make sure that it's met. And a lot of people really don't understand that they have the upper hand in this area because that goal is important. And if that GC doesn't meet that goal, then in most cases that GC is brought into the office and those specific numbers are shared with their GC and say, hey, you got to do better. Let's look at your documentation. You have 3 documents over here talking about MWBEs, but we only see that you only called 1. What about the other 2? So there's a lot of background work that department does, which they do very well. And,
so there's quite a bit of accountability that is built
absolutely.
into this.
Absolutely. And as subcontractors, you have to make sure that the accountability is there and present. And the way you do that is by making yourself present in the process, by contacting that department, understand what's going on, make sure that you're part of it, make sure you're vocal about it, because we always know that if you're in tune and in touch in the process and procedures, you're more likely to get the things that you need, in terms of requests or opportunities or things of that magnitude. It's always that squeaky wheel process. The loudest voice in the room will get the most attention. And sometimes you have to be the loudest voice. Now, I don't mean screaming and yelling. What I mean is understanding the process.
Okay. So reoccurring theme, if you're just tuning in, Cecil Lofton here is discussing, doing business with DISD, especially with the recent bond package that passed in 2020, and looking at those opportunities, but also making sure that you're doing, he calls it the grind, doing your due diligence on understanding who the gatekeepers are, making sure that you have those relationships with the district, but also making sure that you have the relationship with other contractors and GCs that are out there. And I know that, there can be this kind of mindset of, well, I don't want to know them because I'm in competition with them, versus saying, how can I even partner with them and do business with them? And that still helps me meet my goal of doing business with the district and selling myself, my wares, my goods, the services that I offer. And I know that you have seen quite a bit of that.
Well, over the years, been involved with the district for so many years on the construction side, as well as my capacity serving as chairman for the Regional Black Contractors Association back in the day. And one thing that I can quite remember that I think that needs to be a part of the district prowess is that we started a program. It was the Youth Entrepreneur Program that we started with the city of Dallas in conjunction with the ISD. And we did that program for 3 years under Laura Miller. And the success of that program was very prevalent because it gave a lot of students the opportunity of entrepreneurship and understood what it meant. Now, the overall goal of that program was to allow students to really understand that you don't have to be an employee of any company. We want to teach you how to be an employer of your own company.
Right.
And that was the overall structure and goal of that specific program. And we had participants, I think in order to have entrance in the program, you have to be at least a sophomore all the way up to a senior. And we had more sophomores and juniors there than we did seniors.
Really?
And we took certain students from different school district areas. So it was probably maybe like 75 or 80 students that were involved in that program. And
Man, that sounds like a wonderful program.
it was sponsored by Bank of America, and we had other sponsors too as well. And it
Okay.
was an effective program because a lot of those individuals who went through that program, some of them, two of them that I know right now have their own businesses.
That's
So
wonderful.
things of that magnitude is always something that needs to be structured through the school district, because right now a lot of schools are offering associate's degrees, but
Yes.
they don't teach you how to open up a bank account. So there's a lot of different things that a lot of different students need to know about in terms of finance, business, and everything that will give them an ability to really grow in themselves, to really understand how to be productive citizens and make sure that they can manage their lives around the things that they want to do. Because a lot of people have dreams and aspirations, and they always rely on other people to make those dreams and aspirations come true. When you
Right.
control your own destiny, you can
Right.
make your own dreams come true.
Right.
You have to really focus and work on that. And you have to really do the work.
That is, because I think about, of course, I went to Skyline and they have the cluster program, and Townview, they have the business school, and just listening to hear, once again, I'm always hearing certain voices when it comes to, doing this type of work. And grant you, governmental agencies are not the only place that you can contract your services, do bids and get those awards. And they're good places to do it. Always have noted that it's not necessarily the best place for you to jump in and get your experience unless you're doing it definitely as a subcontractor. So you can,
Correct.
Because there are standards with getting the bonds, getting the insurance, having that experience, because that's also part of the proposal and bidding process, is looking at what you've done, because they want to know what your capacity is and making sure that you can deliver on what you say you're going to do. But it just seems like there's definitely some learning opportunities for our younger kids, because yes, we are trained to become employees versus learning how to be that employer and generate jobs for people.
Yeah, that's I think that's always a subject that really needs to be formulated in some of the schools, and in terms of a curriculum, I believe, I think historically, when it comes to our young youth, the direction of that is always a possibility because they're not taught that. They're not trained to think that way.
Right.
And I think raising my kids, I've always trained them and talked to them. This is the way that you can go.
Okay.
If something doesn't work out for you on this other end, create your own. I can guide you in that direction that you need to go. You have a mentor here. And I think every young student, every young person who's striving to change and get involved in the market, find your mentor. Find someone that you can have those discussions with, so that way that you understand the process and procedures of going that direction. And I think there's a lot of different things that can happen as it relates to everything that's going on with all these bonds. Don't forget about the Omni project that they're doing over in South Dallas near the Redbird Mall, the old Redbird Mall, and that huge project, and I often drive through there trying to find people of color, that looks like me there, and yet I haven't yet to see any. So when you have major projects like that in our communities and we're on the outside looking in, I think there has to be some accountability. I mean, if you go further north in other communities, even if they have homeowner associations, they can stop a Walmart from being built in their neighborhood. All it takes for them to show up to a meeting. I mean, we could do the same. We can show up and say, hey, you're spending $12 million over here. We demand that a third of that goes into our community, so we have to shut that down. We have to be responsible.
Yes.
You know, when I was chairman of the organization, the Regional Black Contracts Association, when any project was going on, we made sure we were there. We would make sure that whatever those dollars are, or what community it was serving, we would rally the troops in that general area and say, hey, this is what you need to do.
Yes. And I
You
definitely,
can get it wrong. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
and know that you, for sure, even though you're not the chairman, you're still acting in that capacity, because you know that as a collective, you know, if one makes it, we're all making it.
Exactly. You know,
And
and you
so,
have to grab one to teach one and bring someone along with you, because there's, you know, if you just want to be real with it, oftentimes in our communities, we always say it's hard for us to work with each other because we're
yes,
constantly working against each other. But I
yes,
think if we start changing that mindset, one business at a time, one person at a time, you know, then I think that misnomer can be dispelled quickly. Because I think when it comes to building capacity and within your business, it doesn't matter who you work with. But I
right,
think what it is that there's a piece of the pie that you need to make sure that you can maintain in order to build your brand and build your business. Because the bigger your business is, the more people of color that you can employ.
right,
So you have to think about the future, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, from 10 years from now. So you have to build that brand the way it needs to be built. And the way you can do that is making sure that you're involved in a lot of these talks and this process and this procedure, holding your city council people accountable, holding your
yes,
school district people accountable.
yes,
I mean,
yes,
they're sitting on those boards. They don't sit on those boards just because they want to. You
right,
know, they ran, they won, and you have to hold them accountable. You are their constituents. If
right,
there's something that they're doing or not doing, your voice needs to be heard. You'd be
right. You need to
surprised
make them
what a
aware.
letter will do. You'd be really surprised, specifically if they're not performing in their community. And what
Yes,
I've done in the past, back in the 90s, when I knew a lot of things were going on and was wrong, and I had a council person who wasn't doing what they're supposed to do,
right,
when I sent the letter, I sent it to everybody on the board so they can look at that person and say, hey, man, I got a letter from Cecil saying you're not doing this in your community. I'm going to go over there and help him. So now when he's successful, he's going to say District 7 help instead of District 4. So now my councilman right now said, well, Cecil, you know, well, I tried to do everything I could, but, you know, well, you was not responsive. You didn't
so I
help.
had to go to
You didn't
one of
look at
your
the situation.
counterparts,
So
and
I went to your counterpart. He knows what's going on and everybody on the board. So now,
yes,
where did that put you? That puts you right dead center in the middle. So sometimes you have to think outside of the box. Sometimes you have to do unorthodox things in order to get the attention that you need. There's nothing
yes,
wrong with writing a letter. There's nothing
yes,
wrong with showing up board meetings. There's nothing wrong with holding people accountable.
yes.
Because if you do that, only if you do that, that's when you'll get a response, a true response, and you'll get
And
an
start seeing the
opportunity.
change that you want. Yeah,
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 you cannot, this is a doggy dog world, people, and you cannot be passive in terms of growing your business, okay? You cannot do that, because if you're sitting on the sideline, you're going to stay on the sideline. The only way you're
yes.
going to get in the game is that you got to know the plays. You got to know the rules. That's the only way you're going to get in the game.
And
So you got to
and
get up off the sideline and get in the game.
I'm just looking at the district's website, which I have included, that is awarded suppliers by code. And
Mhm.
so the opportunities, audiovisual equipment, granted,
Mhm.
we spoke about that. You know, all of this technology is going to be driving the need for the equipment that complements that.
Correct.
But audiovisual maintenance and repair,
Mhm.
virtual event,
Mhm.
copiers, license rentals, furniture, you
Correct.
know, toner supplies, but also, you know, telecommunications
Mhm.
and network. You know,
Correct.
that is a huge piece in the technology department, but you know, software, online instructional curriculum software subscriptions. There's
Mhm.
PEA mandated providers,
Correct.
teaching
Absolutely.
and learning aids. I mean, sewing materials, sewing
Mhm.
materials. Who thought
Mhm.
about that? Because you think, well, they don't have home ec anymore.
Correct.
Grocery suppliers, animal food and supplies. You
Mhm.
know, I taught at Lincoln College
Mhm.
over in Grand Prairie. And I talk to my students about, with them being in the associates program, how that put them ahead of their counterparts who were just getting the ASE certification, and put them in a position for management, put them in a position to be able to do the things that you've talked about with, being more articulate, doing the due diligence on seeing what the opportunities are out there for them. And one thing that we hammered into them is not, yes, you may start out as being the technician, but always think about how you can become that shop owner. And it's not just about getting individuals to come in with their cars for you to repair, but how are you providing fleet services? How are you getting contracts so you are having that steady stream of income, and also in multiple directions, because you're one of the repairmen for a school district, for a municipality, for a county, for some transportation agency, DART, TRE, somebody. And then they started seeing the possibilities beyond being that $30 an hour worker. But they gained their experience in that spot and then jumped into the next league as they had that goal in mind. And just, looking at, all of the possibilities out there. And if, you are someone who wants to jump into this, this is a regular topic that I have, because there's enough pie for everybody to have a slice. And to meet their goals and their dreams of being that entrepreneur. And I talked to a young man that remember when he was born, watched him grow up. And whenever I listen to Erykah Badu's Danger, I think about them, because, they had a dangerous occupation at one time. But I hammered into them that game is dangerous, and it comes with, criminal charges, being in the criminal justice system, and get out of it. Get out of it. And where can you get into it? And so I was talking to them about, using hard money to get their feet into the game, and jumping out there with, doing real estate. And that was the number one thing that I hear all the time, and I've admitted it about myself in places, is that having that fear of doing it. And you talked about, having that mentor, but being a sub gives you a great opportunity to have your hand held by a prime and learning how to, come along on this journey so we can get you there so you can do this as well.
Well, if you become astute enough to understand the processes and procedures, and I think you just alluded that the prime will hold your hand, but you want to reverse that. You want to hold the prime's hand, because the prime needs to follow you, because they need you more than you need them. And I think the biggest thing that oftentimes when we talk about doing that type of business along with districts, I mean, public entities and private entities, you always have to make sure that you certify your company as an MWB or WB or something of that magnitude, because that counts toward the goal. Now, if you're competing for a specific good and service, and I'm just giving you an example, if you're, say for instance, you're a computer guy and you want to offer printers to the district, okay, you put a bid into the district, and you're going up against two other competitors, okay? Now, those two other competitors are not certified, but you are. And the district has a goal in mind. Who do you think they're going to pick?
The certified person.
They're going to pick the certified person because there is a specific goal. Now, you can bring the other two or partner with one or the other, but the dollar spent will count toward the goal. So you have the upper hand in terms of being certified. So people just remember, if you're trying to do business, this is not just with municipalities, but also private firms are using the same business models too as well. So you want to make sure that you have those kind of certifications, hub, veteran zone, or whatever. If you're dealing with the state, you know, a lot of people don't realize that the state purchases anything from staples to rats. They do. Everything in between you can possibly think they purchase. They have a long laundry list of what they purchase every year and the contracts that they let every year too as well. You can get a list of that on their website. It's just tons and tons of things that they purchase. And oftentimes we don't even look at that. That's a gold mine in itself, just sitting there, because we're not looking at that. We have to look at what DART procures. I mean, they do a lot, TxDOT, you know, what they procure.
Yeah,
you have to
NCT
look at
data,
all of that.
yeah.
All those things are readily available. You have to look at DFW Airport, what they procure. City of Arlington, the city of Fort Worth. I mean, all these different cities, they procure a lot of material, services. Good. You know, you want to be on those vendors lists. You want to make sure that you're certified. You want to make sure that you get the documentation in, where some of these opportunities for procurement will be automatically sent to you by just being on that list.
Right.
I know that's a lot there you're trying to take in right now, but
and digest.
If you don't do this, then there'll be a lot that's going out more so than coming in terms of building capacity. So sometimes you have to spend the time and make the effort to do all the background work to get you prepared. So when that time comes, you will be prepared. So you can't, again, like I mentioned, sit on the sideline and think things are going to come to you, because they're not.
Right.
You know, I used to tell a lot of kids when I was chairman of Youth Entrepreneur Program, you know, a job is not going to come and knock on your door and say, here I am, I'm available. You have to go out there and seek it or meet it halfway.
Yes.
And if you can do that, and you can build your capacity a lot quicker and a lot better, you know, if this is something that you want to do. Now, if it's a hobby, then everything I'm saying to you doesn't mean anything. But if you're structured and you want to grow that, then listen to everything that I'm telling you, because I'm giving you the tools in order for you to be successful. And the first thing is get your business certified, because that's going to give you an opportunity to get your foot in the door, because that is mandated. And when the districts or any municipality have a certain goal, that gives you an opportunity to play the game, because now you're a certified firm and those dollars
they know
can't
that,
afford to go. Yeah.
Yes.
And they have to have that, you know, so that gives you, even if your numbers are higher, they're going to come back and negotiate with you and say, hey, we need you a part of this project. You know, what can you do? Well, yeah, okay. I know I'm over the budget. Let's talk about it. I mean, you can always negotiate that, but at least you got to the table.
Okay, so that is the main thing, is, you know, doing the due diligence, getting your certifications, and that makes you a player in the game. So I do want to close out. Now I have the contract. What does that mean? Because I'm dancing. I got my letter. I'm dancing. And now all of a sudden it's like, woo, it's real. Now what happens?
Well, you know, that's the fun part. You know, you're getting a letter and or notice to proceed or a letter of award. That means that you've done all the background work. That means that you've done your due diligence. That means that you're prepared. You have the capacity. You know, specifically if it's coming from a general contractor or if it's coming from the district itself. There's two ways to deal with that. I think if it's coming from a general contractor, there's going to be a scope. There's going to be an outline of the services that you're supposed to provide. Then you probably say, well, Cecil, you know, why do I have to fund this job when I don't have the money or the capacity to give them all these devices and so forth and so on? Well, in most cases, you know, as business owners, we know credit means a lot. You know, working with some of your vendors or some of your suppliers in order to be able to float that material for 30 days. And oftentimes when you're dealing with general contractor, there's two things that you have to do. Specifically, what they call a payment schedule or schedule of value, SOV, or SOW, schedule of work. In most cases, that's notated on a specific document that they provide you. They want to know what your full scope and your values are. Say, for instance, if I'm providing computers to a specific project, I would say, oh, the computers is $40,000. The labor cost is $30,000. So that's my schedule of values. But I'm delivering those computers when you say you need them. So if I got $30,000 worth of computers, I'm going to my supplier and say, hey, I need to go ahead and book this PO. I need to have them delivered on this job so I can bill on this specific day. So now I got them. I got a 30-day window in terms of me sending this bill. And I'm talking with the purchasing agent, with the general contractor, and say, hey, I know you wanted these computers out here. I can deliver them out here, but I need to make sure I can get paid in 30 days.
Right.
So that's when you have to have that conversation. Don't just send a bill to someone and you never had a conversation with them. So you have to establish how you're going to get paid. You need to establish when you can bill, and you can establish when you know you're going to get paid so you can pay your supplier. So
right. And
that's how you can dodge that bullet there, because you're basically just passing it through, and you're not having to go out of your pocket and purchase all these computers and so forth and so on. So you have to make sure that going in that you have that already established. So that won't be a headache that you have to deal with on the back end. You want to deal with
carrying costs.
Yes.
Yes. And I tell you, one fascinating topic that I definitely need to have a discussion on, and welcome you to come back and discuss this, is building business credit. Be it, real estate, be it, you want to be a baker and, and get contracts with supplying whatever goods that you want to make. Two, I'm a IT professional, and now I want to get in and do contracts with, the services that I can provide. And how do you, along with building your brand and building that capacity, the money part, how do you get into the game with, building that business credit? Because at one point in time, as a goal, you want to get to that level where you need that big chunk of change to take you to that next level. So definitely invite you to come on and talk about that, because that's a missing piece with also jumping out there into those entrepreneur waters and small business waters. How do you go from being that small business owner to now you're the medium business owner, and your day of becoming that large business owner, that corporation, you're seeing the pathway come, and you're taking those steps and making sure that you get there, because that means that you're going to be hiring people. And I'm not saying that not everyone needs to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. But if that's your passion and goal, these shows are there for you to get out there and take those right steps to actually do it. So Cecil, it was great having you on and catching up with you, son, because we haven't seen each other.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, absolutely.
And we haven't seen each other in a long time here. A lot of that has to do with COVID. So thank you for coming on the show and talking about this again. It is always a great topic to discuss. And again, my wheels are clicking. I feel like I'm running on fumes today. I've had like 3 cups of coffee, and we're going to take advantage of the weather today.
Absolutely, yes.
So next weekend, in observance for the holiday, I would not be having, I'm sorry, I'm thinking about April, and we haven't even closed out March yet. So I will be having a discussion with Jay McGee on, the recent findings with banking in the city of Dallas and redlining that has happened, because as we all know, banks have to lend money to people in the community that they serve. But part of, meeting that goal is that they get a loophole with investing in, housing that isn't necessarily favorable for the community that they are supposed to be serving. So
Absolutely.
I will, be having this discussion with Jay McGee next Saturday. The
Mhm.
following Saturday, we're not going to have a show. We'll be back on April the 10th talking about whistleblowers, because I know we have seen quite a few of them in the news over the past 20 years. But, what happens and what protections are there should you be in a position to blow the whistle on someone? So,
Gotcha.
Cecil, again, thank you so much for your time and coming on the show and having this discussion, and look forward to you being back to talk about how to build that business credit and keep in funding your dream of your business while you're out there doing that grind and doing your due diligence.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I certainly appreciate it.
Yes. All righty. So everybody have a great weekend. Be safe out there. Wear your mask if you choose to. Make sure that, if you're vaccinated, help all of us who have not been vaccinated yet by